What if you had no imagination? And I don't just mean you're not very creative. I mean, what if you were truly fundamentally unable to picture a face in your mind, or hear a song in your head, or even just play out a conversation before it happens? It's a pretty wild thought. And today, we're going to dive into what a life like that would actually be like.
So let's just try a quick experiment together. Right now, wherever you are, just close your eyes for a second. I want you to imagine an apple. Can you see it? Is it red? Is it green? Does it have a stem, a little leaf? Can you picture the light kind of glinting off its skin? Go ahead and hold that image.
Okay, now let the apple go. And I want you to imagine nothing. Not a black room, not a void, just the complete absence of an image. Total blankness where that apple used to be. For most of us, that feeling of nothing is temporary. But for this thought experiment, we're going to explore a mind where that's the default state. A mind's eye that's permanently shut. Seriously? What if that's all you've ever known? No mental pictures, no daydreams, no running through scenarios in your head. How would you even get through the world? Who would you even be? To really get what would be missing, though, we first have to understand what imagination actually is, because it is so much more than just dreaming up dragons and fantasy worlds. If you boil it down, imagination is basically the brain's superpower. It takes all your memories, everything you've ever seen or felt, and it rearranges those pieces into new possibilities. It's like a simulation engine for everything that isn't right in front of your face.
And think about all the jobs our imagination does without us even realizing it. It's not just the mind's eye. It's the tool we use to plan for the future, right? It's how we feel empathy by putting ourselves in someone else's shoes. It's even how we feel fear by picturing the worst-case scenario. It's one of the most fundamental tools we have. So what happens when that tool is just gone? Well, life would become incredibly literal. Let's look at how that would actually play out day to day.
Let's take a simple choice, like deciding whether to take a new job. Most of us, we run these little simulations, right? What if I take it? What's the commute going to be like? Am I going to like my new boss? But without imagination, your decision-making becomes totally reactive. You'd have to rely only on the hard data. Salary, past experiences, pure logic. There's no what if, there's only what is and what was.
And here's the really fascinating twist. So much of our anxiety comes directly from our imagination, from playing those mental movies of everything that could possibly go wrong. Without that, you might actually live a much more present-focused life, free from all that catastrophic overthinking. But the flip side, that exact same skill helps us anticipate real danger. So it's a huge double-edged sword. Now, you're probably thinking this is all just a fun philosophical exercise. But here's the thing, it's not. This condition, or at least a version of it, is real. It's called aphantasia. It was studied by a neurologist named Adam Zeman, and it's a condition where people can't voluntarily create mental images. So when they try to imagine that apple we talked about at the beginning, they get nothing, just the concept of an apple. And this is a really crucial point. Aphantasia is mostly about the visual mind's eye. Many people with it are still brilliant planners, they're logical, they're incredibly creative, they have rich emotional lives. Our thought experiment is about something even deeper. What if all the forms of imagination, visual, auditory, emotional, were just completely absent? So, let's push beyond the practical stuff and get into the really big philosophical questions. What does it mean for our deeper selves to live in a world with no what if? Well, first up, let's think about empathy. We always define it as walking a mile in someone else's shoes. But that very act of simulating what another person is feeling inside your own head, that is an act of imagination. Without that ability, morality wouldn't just vanish, but it would be completely different. Instead of being based on feeling what someone else is going through, their joy or their pain, it would probably become a purely logical, rule-based system, a detached code of fairness, not a real felt connection. And what about your own sense of self? I mean, who you are is so deeply tied to the story you tell yourself about who you hope to become one day. How could you ever form that vision of a future self if you couldn't imagine it first?
Yeah, check out this difference. For most of us, our identity is like a story, right? It connects who we were to who we are to who we dream of becoming. Without imagination, your identity might be more like a data set, just a collection of facts about you, your job, your skills, not a story, but more like a status report.
Okay, so all of this is leading us to our final. And maybe the most profound question of all, what would this mean for the human experience itself? It really makes you ask the ultimate question, doesn't it? If you were born without this engine of possibility, would you still be fully human?
The answer is, of course, yes. Absolutely. Look, imagination is a huge part of how many of us experience life, but it doesn't define our humanity. It doesn't define our capacity to learn, to feel love, to feel pain, or to connect with other people. You would just experience being human differently.
Your inner world would simply be quieter. A lot less cinematic, for sure, less speculative. It would be a life lived in the literal and the immediate, maybe more structured and, in a lot of ways, probably more anchored in the present moment than any of us could ever, well, imagine.
And that might be the most mind-bending part of all of this. You would never even ask the question, what if? Because the very act of wondering is imagination.